and drove in deep into their territory at the end. Just kind of give me your impressions on what happened Saturday.
Yeah, we didn't seem like we came out of the locker room to start the game. For sure, played inconsistent. I think overall I think the guys were pressing a little bit to try and get the first win, after the heartbreaker last week and the odd circumstances there. And then we did a good job rebounding the second half and getting it down to a one score game. If we missed a field goal and I think it was the first half, if we would have hit that, the end of the game potential points would have led to a win, with the clock being where it was. But ultimately, we just got to play more consistent football, and we start doing that, we'll be okay.
You touched on it, maybe wanting to win, but have you been able to, you and your staff, be able to kind of put your finger on the slow start? And then what was the message at half, or what changed? Because you guys shut them out after that point.
Yeah, there were some things said in the locker room that need to remain in the locker room, for sure. There's a lot of fire and intensity, and it was good. We made a couple defensive adjustments, and we felt like picking up tempo. Our speed on offense was going to help us. We did that at the end of the first half as well. So, it's just too little, too late. It was odd to me. There were 20 penalties called in this game, and the first two games we had eight total as a team. So, either our discipline's got to get better, or I don't know. I got to do something. But nonetheless, it was a battle. You got to give credit to New Haven. They did a great job.
Let's talk about your offense a little bit. Jack Shields, your quarterback, had a big night, 31 to 53, 396 yards and a touchdown. Just talk about his performance and how much you feel like he's grown over the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Jack in my mind has given us a chance to win each of the really the last two games. Iowa's a different animal. But there's things that he wants to improve upon as well. We trust Jack. He leads this team. He's great in all those facets. He's good with his legs. There's just a couple situations where he's got to clean up, and he knows it. And I think he will.
What's the biggest thing that you've seen from him? Obviously, it comes into your system new. Do you see him getting more comfortable back there every week?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he was making adjustments on his own, in the game, which they worked out and they were good adjustments. So, there's a comfort level in the offense each week, and we're doing our best to try and make sure he can grow into it. It's not just one of these things where we're going to leave it as it lies. We try to continuously improve so he can have a better game, and we can have a better game. The unfortunate thing, and probably what's padding his step for this week, is when you get down four scores, your call sheet changes, and a lot of the game plan that you intend to use is gone. So then you have to, adapt and adjust, and we can definitely do a better job at that. But he handled it pretty well.
Big night for your tight end, Carter Moses, 9 catches, 119 yards during your time at UAlbany as offensive coordinator. You've had some pretty good tight ends that you've worked with. What does Carter bring to the table, and how does he compare to some of those guys?
Carter's a kid who came in as a receiver, and we didn't recruit him as a receiver. We knew he'd grow into a tight end, but that was just his body of work from high school. And he's got a cool, calm, collected performance about him. He never gets rattled, and now he's probably our most veteran guy. So going into camp, it's the first time in a couple of years since we had Greeny that I felt like we need to try and force targets to the tight end, and he's delivered. So I can only see his role getting bigger.
And then only 40 yards rushing in the game. Was that mostly just the fact that you're down 24 and some of the adjustments you had to make, or was it something New Haven was able to do?
It was more of the landscape of the game. You spotted team 24 points in the first half of the game. It requires change. I felt like Waddell's running the ball well. And we're gonna stick to that as we move through the schedule. But you know, all games change, and you got to be able to adapt. And we just didn't do it enough.
Talk a little bit about your defense. After the early points, as I touched on, no points in the second half, which allowed you to climb back in. What adjustments were you guys able to make on defense?
We changed how we were going to deploy our coverages, and nothing crazy. Just we weren't going to play as much man because they were motioning so much, and we had some trouble fitting our gaps and tracking our correct man when they were doing it. So made that adjustment. Cleared up the edges of the defense and bottled them up, and it worked. So we were able to not get home to the quarterback at all. He was a pretty nifty guy, but we were able to get the ball on the ground when they got the ball on the perimeter and they were running it. So it was good.
Ron Holmes with 8 tackles and a tackle for loss to lead that group. Were there any others that you felt really good about on the defensive side?
Yeah, Abe Sanogo continues to play with an incredibly high motor. And Zakar Morris is a young D lineman that's really coming along for us. He's tough to block in there, and he plays the scheme the right way, and he's disruptive in the backfield. He almost had an interception. I can't remember the last time I saw a nose tackle with a PBU, but the ball went right through his hands, so that would have been interesting. Everybody likes seeing the big guys run. But this defense is veteran and it's finding its identity. And if we can continue to play like we did in the second half, I'm going to be really happy with that unit.
You guys are back at home on Saturday hosting Cornell out of the Ivy League. You've taken an early look at them. What are some of the challenges they present for you?
Well, like any Ivy League team, they're all smarter than us. And that's not a high bar, but it is a bar. Um, but they're a real physical group. They're big. They got good size. They got an outstanding receiver out there who's got all the accolades preseason that you could want and ask for. They do have to replace their quarterback, but every other guy on the offensive side of the ball for them returns. Defensively, they return just about their whole back end. They got to make some. They got to get some guys some reps that hadn't gotten a ton up front. But they're a really well-rounded team. They're really well coached. I've known their coach for a while now. He was at Johns Hopkins when I was at Towson. He's always done a great job. And I know they're going to be they're ready to go, man. It's the first game, so that's one of those things when you play your Ivies, and they've been in camp while you've been battling. So we'll see how that works out.
I was asking Rick about that because they have Dartmouth on Saturday. As a head coach, do you feel like you have an advantage of the fact that you've got 3 games under the belt, or do you feel like they have more of an advantage because you don't have any tape on them to be able to see what they have?
Well, if our record was better, I'd have a little bit more confidence, because you'd have success going your way. But this is something that we deal with because we play the Ivy so much. So I feel like we have enough good tape on them, and thankfully their staff remains. That's always a big concern when you get staff turnover, coordinator change, and then you go into this game for the first time with an Ivy. So the defensive coordinator's done a great job there for a long time, and I feel like we have a comfort with them because we played them last year. But they made some changes and adjustments after we played them, so we'll be prepared for this one.
How much urgency do you feel, and how much urgency do your guys feel, especially being back at home to get that first win?
Too much. I think that was a big issue for us. Our guys, we have a tight group. There's no quitting these guys, but they want to get that first win under their belt for a ton of reasons. And I think in this game, when you try to do too much, you wind up figuring out pretty quick you're doing too little. And you got to find a calm presence and sense about your play as a unit and a player. And I think the guys need to just slow down and focus a little bit more.
All right, Jared, thanks so much for your time this morning. Good luck on Saturday against Cornell.